Hey, Bass Geek here, and today I'm going to tell you how and why you should be using braid as backing on your bait casters. I've been using braid as backing on my bait casting reels now for several years, and there's several different advantages to it versus monofilament. Braid lasts 3, 4, 5, 10 times longer than a cheap mono does. That cheap mono, when you put that on your reel and you use it as backing, it begins to break down, it begins to get tacky, it deforms, and it gets really super brittle. Braid doesn't do that. When braid breaks down, it actually gets a little bit softer. And I've actually heard some guys say that used braid makes the best backing. Now, I haven't really tried that, but I've heard 2 or 3 pros now talk about that. But what I generally do is when it comes to braid, as it begins to break down, it begins to fray, it may not hold the knot to the fluorocarbon that I'm tying to it. So what I generally do at that point is I actually take one of my reels and a reel that has no braid on it, and I spool from this reel to that reel, and it actually is like having brand new braid, because the braid at the bottom of this reel has never seen the light of day. So it's like brand new braid, yards of brand new braid at the very bottom. So now the old braid that's maybe worn, frayed, is at the bottom of the old spool, and the new braid is at the top. Being a clear water guy, a long cast is very important to me. And using braid as backing on my bait casting reels actually allows me to get 10, 20, 30 more feet out of a cast than using mono as backing. The reason why that is because it's lighter, so it allows my spool to turn when casting at a higher rate of speed or higher RPM, which allows for longer casting distance. The third reason I use braid as backing on my casting reels, and probably the most important, is saves me a ton of money. Now, I know most of you are sitting there going, man, braid is expensive. Well, yeah, it is. But I'm not using expensive braid as backing. I mean, you can go to Wish and get thousands of yards of the cheapest braid in 65-pound test that you'll ever find. You're not casting to the knot, it's backing. So what I generally do is I put somewhere around 2 to 3 cast lengths, full cast lengths of the fluorocarbon. Now there's a difference. We're talking about backing, we're not talking about a leader. You should never be able to cast to your knot. That ties together your fluorocarbon and your braid backing. We're not talking about using a leader. We don't want the knot going through the guides. When we get to that, when we get down to that short where we're casting and our knot is starting to come out of the spool, we're cutting that off and we're putting more line on. That's generally how I do every single one of my bait casters. I never cast down to the braid. Once I get to the braid, I know it's time to put new fluorocarbon on my bait caster. The 2 exceptions to that, and really one's not a true exception, it's just a different technique, so my casts are generally shorter, and that's flipping and pitching. If I'm flipping and pitching, I'm going to put maybe 2 flips, 2 pitches worth of fluorocarbon on here, because sometimes I may go to a lake where I want to take that fluorocarbon all the way off and use that braid if I'm flipping grass. So that way I can take the fluorocarbon off, I can still flip and pitch with braid, and then when I come back, home to my home lakes, I can throw me on, 50, 75 feet, 100 feet of fluorocarbon and go back to flipping without having to change my line completely out. The other situation, and it really is an exception, is topwater. Now I like braid, 65-pound test braid as my topwater. But again, when you're fishing super clear water, you've got to have a leader. So what I generally do is I may put, 20 feet 25 feet of monofilament. And I'll use anywhere, since it's a thicker diameter, a lot of times 14, 17 pound mono if I'm fishing open water. Now, we're not talking frogs, but here's the great thing. 20, 30 feet, if I'm fishing a frog with maybe the same top water rod or reel, all I have to do is cut that 20 foot off. Now I've got braid to use over that grass. So again, you're saving money and not wasting line. And you don't need 20 rods and 20 reels to be able to fish multiple topwaters. So first I want to say forgive me about my dirty table. This is kind of my workbench area, so it's going to get dirty. Now, you will need a few things to do this. Of course, you're going to need a reel. This is the Piscifun Phantom that I unboxed in another video a little while back. I'll put a card or a link to this in this video somewhere if you want to look at it a little more. The second thing you're going to need is some electrical tape. You're going to need something to cut said electrical tape. And you're going to need some braid. Now, this is 65 pound test mustad, which I bought from Walmart. This is pretty cheap braid. I think for 11 bucks, you get 200 yards. You can find cheaper braid and more of it out there. This is just something that I've used for the past few years. It's pretty cheap. And, 11 bucks, 200 yards, 65 pound test, not a bad deal. So it's not great braid, but again, we're using it as backing. I don't use anything less than 50 pound test braid as backing because of the line diameter, and you use so much of it. 65 pound test is probably the best all around to do it. And then last but not least, we're going to be putting 20 pound test Cigar Red Label. I got this on sale from Tackle Warehouse, and that's what we're going to throw on this particular reel. So we're just going to do a simple arbor knot. So what you're going to do is you're going to create just a little overhand knot. You're going to wrap this 2-3 times, maybe 4 right here, a little overhand. We'll go one more. You're going to pull that down until you get a nice little knot there. What we'll do is we'll go ahead, we'll get our scissors out, and we will snip that as short as we can. So just leave a little tag hanging off the end. Then to make it simple, we'll go ahead and pull our spool out. We'll thread this through the side. So what we're going to do is we're just going to wrap it around. We're just going to simply tie an overhand knot. Actually, generally what I do is I just tie a couple. We'll go ahead and pull that up. We'll just go ahead and do it one more time, as you can see. And then what we do is we just cinch that knot down. You can see there we have the knot. Now you can tell it's going to slide around, but here's our cure for that. We take our electrical tape, and we literally just cut a very small sliver. We go ahead and thread our line back through, put our side back on. So, the problem that most people, and you can see, people complain about braids slipping on them. So what I do is I just simply put a little piece of tape, a little piece of electrical tape down there. Make sure it's nice. You can see just a little piece. Make sure it's nice and stuck down right over top of that knot. And then we go ahead and we begin to spool. So what I do is I make sure I get just a couple of wraps right over top of that. There we go. Right there. Now, so we can see that I've got it nice and covered. And I mean, guys, you can see this is not going to slip. Yeah, my drag's slipping. But I mean, I can tighten down the drag all day, and you can see that braid is not going to slip. So the big key is we want to make sure that we have our spool tension halfway, our drag backed off about halfway, and our brake either totally off or halfway on. And the reason why that is because a lot of times if you have one tightened down, it will spool to either the left or the right. So you want to make sure that that doesn't happen. Now the other thing is with braid, you want to make sure it's on there tight. So you either want to have someone holding the line, some sort of spooler, a tensioner. So one thing that you want to make sure that you're doing is that you're moving side to side with your line guide so that it goes on. Don't go too fast. That's another big key. Do not reel too fast. Keep, you know, I'm holding this line as tight as I can hold it. You can actually see the color coming off of it. All right, and I'm going to stop right in the middle. Now you can see I've got just a little bit of a lip. That's going to be how much, and I'll fill it up just below this machine lip here of fluorocarbon. So generally what I'll do is I'll just grab it right here, go ahead and cut it. That way I can go ahead and run it through my rod. All right, guys, so what I do is I just use a uni to uni, and I'll be absolutely honest with you. You can use just a straight overhand knot. It really doesn't matter. Again, you're not, and you should not, when I talk about backing, we are not casting. This is not a leader. We are not getting to this knot. But I'm going to tie a double uni knot. So I'm going to take and line them out. There's plenty of good videos out there. If you want me to do a knot video, let me know. I'm going to run this about 3 times, and we are going to cinch it down. Now, we'll go ahead and do our fluorocarbon the same way. I know you probably can't see this, but again, it's just a double uni knot, fluoro to braid. There's plenty of videos out there. I go ahead and pull them down. Now you can see what we've got there. Go ahead and pull my leader or my tag ends. You can use a blood knot. You know, again, we're not getting down to this knot. If you're casting this knot, if it comes out one guide, if it comes out of the reel, then you need to put more line on your reel. This is backing because, guys, we're putting this down far enough that if you get to this knot, you're losing casting distance. The lower the amount of line on your reel, the shorter the length of your cast is going to be. Again, we want our line right in the middle. So again, you're just going to follow back and forth with pressure and make sure that you get a nice, smooth, and even distribution of line. And that'll be about where I want it. You can tell I keep it just a little below the lip. You know, I may fill it up a little farther than some guys, but you can see right there, just a little below our lip. We stop in the dead middle. We go ahead and cut our line, and we're done. So I hope this helps you out. I hope it saves you money. I hope it's done the same thing for you that it does for me. It allows for farther casting, saves me a ton of money. I have to do much less reel maintenance during the off season. As a matter of fact, this is my favorite swim bait rod and reel. I've had it for 2 years. I've not had to touch the braid on it one time. And I've already relined this probably 4, 5, 8 times as far as the fluorocarbon goes. I know braid's not cheap, but like I said, I'm telling you, I mean, there are a ton of apps. There's a ton of cheap braid out there on Amazon. This is not a leader. There's only 2 rods or 2 situations that I'm using a leader on a bait caster. That is my flipping stick. So I'm not going to put the cheap braid on that. And that is my top water rods. I'm not going to put the cheap braid on that because I am casting a certain amount or certain portion at times of my braid. But everything else, jig rods, even my flipping rods, when I'm using fluorocarbon, I still put just enough to get 2-3 flips distance in there without getting to my braid. I don't want to get down on my braid even on that. You're going to save a ton of money so you can buy better line, better fluorocarbon. And if you're, some of the guys out there that are, fishing that dirty water and you're just using braid, hey, more power to you. I fish some really clear water. This is a necessity to me. We'll do another video later on what I use and how I use it on my spinning gear. Now on spinning gear, I do use primarily braid with fluorocarbon leaders. I hope this helps. I hope it saves you money. And as always, questions and comments in the comment section below. If you've got any questions, something I may have missed or went over too fast, let me know. If you've got tips of your own on how to do this, go ahead and leave them down there and share them with the rest of us. Help us all out. So comments and questions in the comment section below. Like it if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe, and you guys rock.